materials that they have in their possession that pertains to this search and that is subject to a public records request to identify specifically what it is and to make any necessary redactions. To be quite candid, I'm not sure exactly what all is contained in the file that the search firm has that they're prepared to share, but I can follow up with the board so that you all can be clear about the information that will be subject to disclosure.
Okay, thank you. And correction is the list that we are receiving are the candidates who are remaining in the search. So let me correct that. Vice Chair Harris and then Board Member McKissick.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure who can answer this, but I do have a question. I have printed off all of the emails between myself and the entire board and the search firm. And I have gone through all of these, and I've gone back to February the 26th when we got a list of 7 qualifications. I don't know who can answer this, but I want to know what happened to those 7 qualifications, because that was the assumption that I had, the list that was being used to filter out candidates. I don't know who can answer that, but I want to know what happened to that list of 7 qualifications. We were all on this email.
That's a question that we will send back, Ms. Harris, to the search firm, and I cannot answer that.
They said that would be available during the meeting by phone, so somebody needs to give them a call. That was in the email too they sent, that would be available during our board meeting this evening if anybody had questions. So
Yes, ma'am. Board Member McKissick.
I just wanted to clarify for the public when the word transparency is thrown out there, that I believe that my colleagues and I were all acting in good faith, because this is all about what's best for the children of this district, of all of our students and their families. So there certainly was not any clandestine effort on my part, I can speak for myself in this regard, to withhold any information. Maybe the semantics and perhaps got confused somewhere along the way over the last 6 months when we were holding community meetings and trying to provide as much information as possible at the website created specifically for this purpose. But as far as transparency, that is what I do in everything that I do in my life, and with integrity. So I want to make that very clear to any and all listening out there that there may have been a misstep, but there was no intentional effort to mislead the public, to misguide the public. And I know our board chair really did, she exhausted every effort to attend every single meeting that we put out there. So don't be misguided by saying there's a lack of transparency to confuse that with not really being concerned about doing what's best for the children of this district. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Board Member McKissick. At the end of the day, our focus is always 110,000 students in this district and the 14,000 employees that we provide job opportunities. We will always do what's best for Memphis-Shelby County Schools. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I do know you want to move on, but I do think, thank you. I don't want Ms. Harris' legitimate question to not be addressed at this work session so we can be prepared to carry it forward in the next meeting. We own the policy. By ignoring that real conversation that's in the public domain, we are assuming that the community is, or our colleagues are in support of the policy status quo. Madam Chair, to your credit, you asked us that we want to address the policy changes prior to starting this process. I think Ms. Harris is within her purview as a board member to ask us to own that policy, and if we want to make adjustment, be prepared to present them at board meeting and vote on them. And if it is to add additional candidates or remove candidates, any board member should be able to address that, and we then have to answer to that either through affirmation of that or by voting it down. But we don't get to just pretend that that's not in the public domain. And so I want you to know I hear you, and our colleagues, if we agree with it, then we support those changes. If we don't, then we don't have to. But we own policy. And if we think the policy needs to be adjusted, then we adjust it. We think the policy stands where it is, then we answer to the community who believes. Again, we all have heard those conversations. And if we think that we're in right, we shouldn't just look at our general counsel. If we think there are changes to affirm where we want to go for our next superintendent, let the public know what we want to do. It shouldn't be a surprise to those candidates when they come before us for consideration.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So next week, colleagues, we will be prepared because that's our business meeting and that's our opportunity to vote up or down. You have any other recommendations? Please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to send your emails. I promise we want to get it right. Vice Chair Harris.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Board Member Woods. If I have to stand alone, I'm still going to go by policy. Are we making a decision next week to go with the existing policy of the 3 basic qualifications, or are we going to discuss criteria? I don't think we made that clear tonight. I thought that was the purpose of this conversation. I'm a little confused. And when I said there was no transparency, that's what I mean. I know the term of transparency and what that means. If we're given 7 qualifiers and it does not reflect the rubric, that's not transparency. So my question is to my colleagues, are we going to go by board policy as it is, 3 basic qualifications, or are we going to discuss board equivalent criteria? Because that's also in the policy, but it has to be voted on. So we need to discuss what that additional criteria is going to be so that we can vote on it next week.
The floor is open for discussion.
Madam Chair, it would make very little sense to me to change policy in midstream. If you're in the process of selecting a superintendent, how are you going to write policy around that tonight and the time before as you're doing it? That policy we must abide by. We should be able to abide by what is written in the record, and it should not be altered for any other reason than to add more people to it. It makes no sense. If we have a policy in place, you wouldn't change it just to add folks or to dismiss folks during the midst of the process. That to me would be blasphemy. You just don't tamper with policy when you are dealing with that policy at this time. This is not the appropriate time to do it. That's why I ask, what role will this firm continue to play once we accept their candidates? Are they done then, or are they still a part of the process?
It's in the contract.
I've read the contract. What role do they play after if we have decided that we are going to take their recommendations?
General Counsel, would you please jump in? And then Board Member Garcia, give us guidance around what we put in the contract.
Prepared to answer, I guess, any specific question. I mean, the contract does outline what the obligations of the search firm are, and they are to assist the board with the selection of its superintendent utilizing, I guess, criteria that was provided to the search firm. At least what I understood, from my attendance Saturday and just the contract itself, I believe there was, they were providing the board with both traditional and non-traditional candidates for its consideration. I think with the understanding that there was flexibility with the board and its policy to select either a traditional or non-traditional candidate.
And I think Vice Chair Shalia's question is, were the candidates selected based on the rubric from the board or the rubric that the firm provides within its practice? And I think that's the question.
I can't answer that question, Board Chair. I think the search firm is probably in the best position to answer that question.
Thank you. Board Member Garcia.
Vice Chair Harris, I had the exact same question of if I am the listening public and I come to the business meeting next week and I either say we're moving forward with the policy as written, or I have an board approved criteria that I want to propose, what did that discussion look like to arrive there? I think we need to have that. Maybe we are not prepared in this moment, but we need to have a public meeting where we are discussing what we want to do around the policy before we proceed. If our path is to interview 4 candidates and we believe that we need to decide that before those interviews happen, then we have a special call meeting. We have maybe there, myself included, what would I propose right now? I don't know if it's my best thinking in the moment, right? But I want to put some thought into it. And I think we all need to come prepared to contribute to that discussion. So I would propose us just taking it head on, let the public hear what we want, a policy discussion that we should have had months ago, right? Let's have it, and the public will know then when we come to our business meeting, how did you arrive there? I think that is the feedback that I've received, I know you have received, that we can't have one-on-one discussions and then just throw it all together here, because something doesn't feel, it feels like we're missing something. So I think let's have that full discussion.
So I am taking notes, policy discussion, because I'm asking for recommendations. So I have down policy discussions for next week. We will vote on to continue with the search or not. Are there any other recommendations? I want to make sure I get all of them. Did I miss one, Ms. Harris? I have policy. First of all, we need to complete the policy discussion and vote on whether we go up or down, whether we're going to add to it, and we need to be real clear because it is a conversation that I started on October 29th, 2022. Number two, I paused, and members wanted to call into question, why did I pause the search? It was very clear last Saturday that we were not ready to move on, and I wanted to make sure that all questions were answered before we continue in a process. So that's the reason why I paused and did not continue with interviewing candidates this weekend, because I did not feel that we were ready and our questions were answered. So continue or not. The rubrics, it's been called into question. Ms. Harris brought up a concern. Which rubric are they using? Are they using the rubric from the board, or is the search firm using their rubric? And I think that's a fair question, and it's a question that we need to get an answer to. Are there any other recommendations? I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Yes, ma'am.
No comment. One of the recommendations that you listed was, are we going to change? I don't think we need to change board policy in the middle of the process. I don't think that's fair.
We need to define the other side of or.
Not what. So
Be real clear,
from
Ms.
my
Harris.
understanding here, because I've wasted all my paper printing all this stuff out. As it stands, board policy 1003, which is the superintendent qualifications, there are 3. Number 1, possess experience in teaching and school administration totaling at least 10 years, or some board-approved equivalent. If we have not approved an equivalent, we have to go with what it is. Number 2, have an advanced degree with a concentration related to educational administration, or some board-approved equivalent. We did not vote on an equivalent. Number 3, possess or be eligible for a license of qualification for a superintendent in the state of Tennessee, or some board-approved equivalent. That is the policy as it stands. And I mentioned earlier, we had time to change it. We did not do it. I even said we're not going to change it. So I'll stand on that. And so we can't change it mid-process. There are 3 basic qualifications outlined in our policy. Thank you for bringing it up. So we need to go by those 3 basic qualifications outlined in policy. There was no board-approved equivalent. We did not discuss that or vote on it. So we have to go with policy as is. I'm confused by any other option.
I'm going to refer to our general counsel. I'm sorry. No pressure.
I think, Chair, it'd be helpful for me what is the question? I mean, I'm being candid. I mean, if Board Member Harris, I mean, I do want to assist where I can, so please, if there's a specific question.
There was a recommendation next week for us to review and amend policy, and I questioned that, saying I don't think it's a good idea for us to amend a policy, the superintendent policy, in the middle of the process. That's not fair. And so we need to go with 1, 2, and 3 as is.
Okay, I think Ms. Harris, I think the board has several options. So it does lay out specifically a list of criteria, but then it does provide an or some board-approved equivalent, right? Meaning that what comes before the or is not it. The board on its own could approve of some alternative qualification for its superintendent. The policy is silent on the time frame in which the board should do that. It doesn't say that it needs to happen at a particular time. How I interpret that is that the board is free up until some point before selection of its superintendent to approve of some equivalent qualification. And that's entirely up to the board. If it wants to lay out another qualification at some point that it is willing to accept in lieu of what comes before the or, then it's free to do that. And the board has to make that decision. And it is policy. You're correct. You all can change it, but if I hear from the board, you're not wanting to do that at this time. Another option that the board has, because it is its own policy, you can suspend your policy or a portion thereof at any time. So that is an option of the board if it chooses to do so. But as far as what comes behind the or, the board-approved equivalent, I just want to be clear. I don't see a time frame contained in this policy as to when that board-approved equivalent must be made by the board. It just says that it has to be approved by the board. So at some point, this lays out a condition of the superintendent of schools. So at some point before a superintendent of schools is selected, the board, in my opinion, based on my interpretation of this policy, would need to approve of some equivalent if it's inclined to do so.
Thank you, counsel. And that's the way that I read it as well. I said it would not be fair for us to amend it in the middle of the process. I get the policy. I get what you're saying. That is all true. I'm saying it would not be fair for us as a board, middle of this process, to go through and change the policy.
Board Member Garcia, and then Board Member Coleman.
So when we say change the policy, I think what we mean is, are we going to get together and decide what board-approved equivalent is at this point? So not changing the core three, but what's the, I agree with you. But just not, we're not throwing out the policy. Okay. I have a question for Council Walker. If we do not change our policy, is Interim Superintendent Williams qualified as it is written? I'm asking because we received a legal opinion on Saturday. Because I think that is the question we're not directly asking, and that's what I. But if you do know of other candidates who don't meet those qualifications, and that has also been presented to us, I would love to hear that as well.
Yeah, so I'm not prepared to answer whether or not a particular candidate is qualified or not. What I will share is that I believe that the policy affords this board some discretion to pick either a traditional or non-traditional candidate. I think that's how my understanding of this policy.
Did your question get answered? Board Member Garcia, did your question get answered, was my question.
No.
I want to
Oh, go on. I'm sorry. Go on.
add to it, Ms. Hewitt-Garcia. I think you also asked about the opinion this past Saturday about the validity of this policy. I think my opinion is that this policy is valid, so I did want to offer that to you as well. That was another part to your question, but I want to make sure I respond to that.
Board Member Coleman.
I think Board Member McKissick said something mighty powerful a few minutes ago when she talked about the integrity of this, about the honesty, about doing what's right in the midst of all of this. If I looked at this policy and said, I meet one of the qualifications, but they say I have to meet all three, and I withdrew or I did not submit my name, and now we're saying that you have to have this or don't have that, we're not being fair to ourselves, let alone our community. We have to stick by what is written in policy. This is not the time to change the policy. This is not the time to go half-heartedly with the policy. Either or. It's just that point blank, plain and simple. We have too many lives at stake if we don't get this right. We have too many young people. Chair Green said it at the beginning, over 110,000, over 15,000 educators in our system. We can't just go changing policies or amending policies or suspending policies because of what it feels like at this time. We have to do this right. I think we should just put this and talk about it when we have more time, like Board Member Hugh Garcia said, because right now we're operating off emotions. And we've got to get this right. We have got to get this right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This may seem hard. I think when you got great candidates, that part may be hard. But we get to say who we want in the pool and when we don't. We don't have to hide behind a policy or a rubric. We get to say that I got to answer the folks in District 4. And when you bring that list to me, I don't mind having tough conversations with folks that said, based on how I'll be voting, you don't qualify. Based on what I want from my district or my school, you shouldn't be a candidate. We should own that. I could not commend Ms. Harris more when she said from the beginning of this, she wants an educator to be at least one thing to consider for a superintendent. I think we've shown from previous superintendent that it's a host of great skill set that can lead this district. I am elated that we have expanded candidates, particularly those who have served this district well. I'm excited to hear what they have to say to our community. That gets me super excited. I'm excited that there are national candidates that want to come to Memphis, Tennessee. So if you're afraid to tell someone I'm going to vote for you or not vote for you, then start over. Take 6 months. Take a deep breath. But if you signed up for this work, then bring it today. That simple. So next week, Ms. Harris get to bring a recommendation to say, you know what, the policy as it stands is fine. And if you don't meet these criteria, you cannot be considered for superintendent. We get to press this button and say yep or no. And that sends a clear message for anyone who does not meet those criteria. If the board don't want to take it there and say, you know what, this is my policy. We own it. We'll adjust it. 5 people get to say, yeah, I heard the community, but here's where I stand. General Counsel, I'm not going to put you in that tough seat. I signed up for District 4 for that vote. I don't need you to give me cover. So whatever we want to do next Tuesday, I'll be here at 5:30.
Thank you. Board Member Woods? No more lights. We are now on the agenda of staff action items. The first item on the agenda. I'm through. Did I miss your report? I'm sorry. Superintendent, please give us your report for tonight.
Thank you, Board Chair. So good evening. Yes, we were on the road, weren't we? So good evening and welcome to those who are present here today and those who are watching on Facebook and the Voice of Memphis-Shelby County Schools platforms. So we have entered the final 6 weeks of the school year, which means our students, our teachers, have started the rigorous process of TCAP and Tennessee Ready state testing. Thank you to all of our teachers, our principals, our building test coordinators, and support staff who are helping our students finish strong. This is an important time of the year for us as we assess students' academic progress. Last week, we presented at the Shelby County Commission our 2023-2024 budget proposal. Commissioners listened thoroughly and were very enthusiastic about our budget proposals. Most importantly, we discussed supports for students, which include offering additional opportunities for them to be exposed to experiences outside of school walls. So we listened. Remember, we talked a lot about field trips. Making a $9 million investment to better support our English language learners is included in our budget. It's expanding advanced academic courses and enhancing safety and security efforts through the additional investment of over $37 million, an investment to total $50 million. So as we've invested heavily on our talent recruitment and retention strategy, our employees remain at the forefront of our discussions. We're planning to invest in over $50 million in compensation. Here's the breakout. $27 million in a new teacher salary schedule. We have $5 million on sign-on bonuses for new certified teachers. We have around $2.3 million of teachers for critical needs subjects, $3.2 million for school leader salary schedule increases, and for our non-instructional staff, we have over $7.9 million. So in addition, we have been talking about the Fraser community. So I'm excited to say that we're advocating for a new school in Fraser, and we've been advocating for several years, and I feel like that we're coming one step closer. So we have requested for the first year's funding for the new construction of a high school in the Fraser community, and we're working actively with the county commission and the mayor to finalize for approved funding. So board members, we look forward to meeting and discussing our finalized budget proposals for approval, which includes that new teacher salary schedule. In the upcoming weeks, we'll also have infrastructure meetings. So listen, leading isn't easy, but it's not meant to be. The work at hand continues for us all, and right now is such a pivotal time for our district. Leading by listening while also questioning processes, practices, and remaining focused on true transformational change. So, as I stated at the State of the District, John Maxwell once said that many of us want the perks of leadership without the price of leadership. The price of leadership is sacrifice. The price of leadership is tough decisions. Also, the price of leadership is sometimes scrutiny. But most of all, the price of leadership is service. Our district is better because of you. Our district and our ability to stand strong is better. Most importantly, united. And on behalf of 110,000 students and families, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent Williams. We are now on the agenda of staff action items. The first item on the agenda is 8.1.
All right, Madam Chair, so it is recommended that the Shelby County Board of Education approves the award for the contract to CDW Government. And I want to call to the mic Chief Lakshmi to talk a little bit about what Zero Trust in the Networks Access is, and just briefly give us an update on it.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent. Yes, we're seeking approval from the Board of Education for amount of $1,589,500 from CDW government for the purchase of a product called iBoss, which offers zero trust network solution. What this essentially gives us is another added layer of security for user authentication, the data transfer, and also any cloud applications that the district devices will access. So basically, we already have many security protocols in our district with our devices and the data, with the email. This adds another layer of security. This product is highly used by many large school districts across the country.
All right, so thank you, Chief Lakshmi. I'll turn it back over to you, board members, if you have any questions. If not, we can move to the next item.
8.2.
All right, so 8.2 is Motorola Solutions for console upgrade, and it is recommended that we approve for the amount of $167,251. And I just want to turn it over to Chief Jackson for a brief update.
Thank you, Superintendent. It is recommended that the Shelby County School Board of Education approves the award contract to Motorola Solution, Inc. in the amount of $167,251.25. This is for upgrading and installation our radio dispatch system that we have so we can have better connectivity to the police communication. The purchase is a piggyback agreement with the state for the equipment and the service contract.
right, so I'll turn it back over to you once again, board members. If there are no questions, we can move to the next item.
8.3.
All right, 8.3 is a purchase for Thomas Consultants and Array Jones for laptops and computer cards. I want to turn it over to Mr. Langston to give a brief update, as this is a large purchase for Title I. Typically, we see these purchases around this time of the year. Turn it over to you, Mr. Langston.
Yes, ma'am. So it's recommended that the Shelby County Board of Education approves the orders for Thomas Consultants. Again, board members, these are for our priority schools. Again, as a refresh of technology for our priority schools. This is grant funded in the grant application. So again, asking for your approval for these priority schools.
All right, so I'll pause for any questions. All right, 8.4 is a similar item, and I'll take that one together. So it is typically around this time of the year that we have a Title I refresh for our schools, and the previous purchase was for laptops. This is for student desktops, so we can move accordingly to 8.5, if you will, Madam Chair. All right, so 8.5 is for AT&T and 1FB for district-wide emergency and security telephone line services. And I know that we've been working on some upgrades for connections for fire alarms, Chief Lakshmi, along with elevator telephones. Is there any additional information you'd like to add?
No, Superintendent, that's exactly what it is. It's for $4,000 and $5,550 for just telephone lines that will enable emergency elevators and fire alarm panels. And it is a state county fire marshal mandate to have these phone lines in place.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief Lakshmi. All right, so next, board members, I would like to discuss 8.6 through 8.10 collectively because they're similar in nature. They are basically completed projects that need an extension just only to process the final payment. And so since they're similar in nature, I ask for permission from our parliamentarian to discuss them together. Okay, yes. That's right. So Madam Chair, may I have permission? All right. So the items are for 8.6, 8.7, 8.8, 8.9, and 8.10. Like I said, this is zero amount for the amendment, more or less to process the final payment that is within the contract amount. All right, so 8.11, this is APS facility maintenance for facilities management. For Alsea Elementary School, and what you see here is just an approval in the amount of $154,935.69. This is for the construction services for capital improvements at Alsea. So I just want to point out Alsea is a brand new school. We want to be great stewards of tax dollars, and so the appropriation that came from the county commission, there was some remaining funding, and what you'll see is some updates to the school based on that appropriation. All right, so yes, ma'am. Okay, let's go back to 8.10. Yes, ma'am. It was similar in nature for the contract amendment, so that was the request to combine 8.6 through 8.10, if you will. Yes, ma'am. All right, so 8.12. All right, so 8.12 is CBRE Hury for project management services for the new East Region High School. As you all know, that we were successful in receiving the appropriation from the county commission related to the legislation changes. And what you'll see for the funding that was received is for our first in 10 years new East Region High School. And so we're picking up steam there and starting on the project management. And you'll see CBRE Hury in the amount of $2,740,335. And I'll pause for any questions at this point in time. All right. So 8.13, the Renaissance Group, Fleming Architects and Architectural Engineering Services for the new East Region High School, similar related to our 10-year brand new high school, right? So this amount is for the architect work of $5,527,500. So I'll take a moment for any questions here.
Board Member Woods.
Madam Chair, really no questions. I know the Superintendent, your team is prepared to present today and tell us how they got here. So I'll just take liberty to mention both Fleming and CBRE in this process, both of great reputation as well as previous work with this district. Not only that, I think they bring reputable minority partners with them on this work. So looking forward to seeing what they can do for Memphis-Shelby County Schools. And if any indication to the work they did out in Collierville, then the bar has already been set pretty high to what's possible in the East District. So I know Ms. Harris is glad that that school will be walking distance from her district. So excited about seeing what comes next.
All right. Thank you, Board Member Woods. All right, the next item is the contract approval for Robinson Mechanical Services for Douglas Head Start Center for HVAC improvements and replacement. That amount is $170,381, Madam Chair. The next item is Education Networks of America for the IT network upgrade. This amount is for $30,344,518, and I'll turn it over to Chief Lakshmi because of the amount and the time frame of the project. Please just articulate, that project.
Thank you, Superintendent. So as the Superintendent stated, it is for a dollar amount of $30,344,518 awarded to Education Networks of America. This project is to replace the network equipment distributed across the district, which would be multiple components such as the switches and the routers and the access points and several other equipment pieces. The cost of the equipment for all our district locations totals $27,971 and $240. The cost of the equipment and installation for 10 pilot sites is $2,373,278. This vendor was selected through an invitation for bid process, which resulted in the lowest price for the total ask, which is, again, replacing the network equipment for all locations and installation for 10 pilot sites. I just want to state that the reason for this project is a lot of our network equipment are as old as 12 years, and they are in a dire state of replacement, and we don't even have parts to keep them up and going. This will give long-term benefits for the district in terms of increasing internet bandwidth and productivity for our students and our teachers in all of the buildings of the district. The project is for a 3-year term. I think the question was asked in the committee meeting about which are the 10 pilot sites, and I can read it for the record. It's Cordova, East High. They're all high schools. Cordova High, East High, CTC, Hamilton High, Manassas High, Ridgeway High, Southwind High, Treasevant High, Whitehaven High, and White Station High, and our Avery building. So those are the 10 pilot sites that we had chosen because they were high schools, and like I said, they have a high concentration of student population, so they would immediately benefit from these upgrades. But as we get into the project, I promise to bring it back to the board of the next round of priority of schools. But our recommendation for the school priority would be where there are internet failures, internet deserts, older equipment, older buildings, student population and concentration. So we'll base it on that and create the next priority as we proceed into the project.
All right, thank you, Chief Lakshmi. I'll take any questions now from board members. All right. If none, I will go to the next item, Board Chair. Okay. So 2023 Head Start budget revision and carryover for the application. This is a revision in the amount of $865,612.44. I will turn it over to Chief Carson as this is carryover funding and to just discuss what that funding will be utilized for those students.
Thank you, Superintendent Williams. These funds will be used for our vehicles to transport PPEs, instructional materials, technologies, also be used for facility projects and playgrounds that were not completed in the 2022 budget.
All right, so thank you, Chief Carson. All right. So no questions. The next item is for the approval of K-12 math textbook adoption. I've heard a lot from teachers about math textbooks and adoptions, right? So I want to just say that they have finalized the textbooks committee. And they have a recommendation. So we can pull that recommendation up, and I want Ms. Merle to come up. Ms. Merle Isabel, who has been with the district for 46 years. So, Ms. Merle, take it away.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Williams. It is a pleasure for me to present the titles this afternoon that we're asking you to approve for adoption. We want you to know that these are titles that you will vote on next week during the regular board business meeting. During the regular business meeting. And I'm going to call it by course, title, as well as the publisher and the copyright. For grades K through 5, that's kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, it will be Envision Mathematics, Savvis, which was previously known as Pearson Corporation, and it's Fennell, Charles, and others, 2024 edition. Grades 6 through 8, Iretic Classroom Mathematics, the publisher is Curriculum Associates, LLC, the author, Curriculum Associates, 2024 edition. Algebra 1, grades 8 through 12. It will be Envision Mathematics, Algebra 1, Savvis, previously known as Pearson, Kennedy, Mylou, and others, 2024 edition. Algebra 2, Tennessee, which will be for grade levels 9 through 12. Tennessee Reveal Math, Algebra 2, McGraw-Hill School Education, LLC, Kojak, and others, 2024. Geometry, grades 9 through 12. The title of the book is Tennessee Geometry with CalChat and CalView. The publisher, Big Ideas Learning, LLC, Larson, Boswell, and it was published in 2024. For pre-calculus, grades 9 through 12, the textbook is Demana, Pre-Calculus, Graphical, Numerical, and Algebraic. The publisher, Savvis. The authors, Demana, Waite, 2019 edition. Calculus, again, the same edition, Demana, Pre-Calculus, Graphical, Numerical, and Algebraic. The publisher, Savvis, formerly known as Pearson, Demana, Waite, the year was 2019, publication date, copyright date. AP Calculus, Calculus for AP, it's Cengage Learning, Larson, 2021. Statistics, Elementary Statistics is the title of the textbook, McGraw-Hill School Education, LLC, Blumen, and it's a 2018 edition. And last but not least, AP Statistics, Stats Modeling the World AP, Savvis, formerly known as Pearson, Bach 2020 edition.
So thank you, Ms. Merle. So I think the question is often asked around textbook adoption. So the standards are changing for math next year. And so this adoption will allow us to have the curriculum and materials aligned with the standards, number one. And two, it's often asked that when you adopt, do you purchase? So right now, in our budget at this time, in our next year's budget proposal, is the purchase for these textbooks, right, Ms. Merle and Tito?
That's
all
correct.
right, Ms. Merle, Ms. Legendary Ms. Merle. All right, that's one question that is often asked. And another one is around the professional development. I think I heard from teachers by leading and listening through this time that we do great with initiatives, but sometimes we need to focus on the fidelity of the implementation. And so there's extensive professional development that Chief Carson, our curriculum team, Ms. Maples, is currently working on in a timeline to execute for this adoption. I'll turn it over for any questions at this time.
Madam Chair, Madam Superintendent, I don't have any questions, but you are the only person so far since been on this board that get to step before the board and ask us to spend millions of dollars and we just enjoy seeing you here. I just want to, I don't understand. I'm conflicted, but I do enjoy seeing you at our meetings. To Superintendent's point, it will, board member, lead to spending some money. I assure you that. But it's always great to hear you speak and how excited you are knowing that our kids are going to be getting new materials to help advance education in Memphis-Shelby County Schools. So I really, really have enjoyed working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. And I was a former math teacher. So they need math textbooks.
Thank you, Ms. Merrill. And one thing about Ms. Merrill, I must add, she is a direct, straight shooter, so she will get us all together. Thank you, Ms. Merrill. All right, next item is the MOU with University of Memphis. So it is recommended that the board approves the University of Memphis 5-year MOU for 2024-2029. And so, Chief, do you mind just kind of elaborating on the MOU and sort of the services that will be provided by the University of Memphis?
Sure, absolutely, and no dollars attached to this MOU, but it is a 5-year MOU with the University of Memphis to provide their students to the district for student teaching and other practicum experiences. So from those students, for example, this year there's approximately 226 of those student teachers. 115 of those are seniors, and we're expected to sign about 80 of those students to contracts to teach within the district. So this contract supports a large body of work around us adding new teachers to the district.
So the next item, if there are no questions, our board chair, and I would love for Ms. Thomas, I see her in the audience, to come up to the mic in case there are any questions, Ms. Melita Thomas. And so the next item, and I know Board Member Johnson probably worked directly on some of these name changes, but the school name change for Northwest Prep Academy. And so it is recommended that the Shelby County Board of Education approves the name change for Northwest Prep Academy to Invictus Academy at Airways. That is correct. All right, so if you don't mind, I'll go to the next one and then I'll open up to questions. All right, item 8.20 is the school name change for Airways Achievement. So it is recommended that the Shelby County Board of Education approves the school name change for Airways Achievement at Norris Road to Norris Achievement Academy. All right, so I'll take an opportunity for questions.
I know Mr. Johnson is just burning over there. I can see the smoke. Mr.
it.
Johnson, you have the mic.
It's Norris. Thank you.
Norris, yes, sir.
Madam Chair, could you just help us understand how we got here with the school name changes?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How we got here with the school name changes?
Sure. Ms. Thomas, would you like to elaborate on the process for
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity.
And rationale, yes.
Yes. So we follow the policy or the procedures. We had community meetings with our parents, students, and our board member Johnson. And the students came up with the names of the schools that they wanted us to vote on. And Board Member Johnson came out to the schools, and we vetted those names with the students, and they came up with those names. So Invictus Academy, and I have the principals here with me also. Invictus Academy at Airways was the winner. The students really bought into that name and gives them a refreshed opportunity to feel really strong about themselves and about their school. And then Norris Achievement Academy was named because this is the old Norris Elementary building, and it just goes with the school, and they really enjoyed that name, or they approved that name.
Well, thank you. That's good. That's good information to know. So,
I'm sure you're familiar with Invictus.
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes, very. Is that, are you challenging me?
No, well.
Brother Williams, Brother Walker. Brother Johnson, you've been here for 90 days. You've changed 2 school names. At this rate, we're going to have all new school names. I mean, good work, man.
Would you like me to give you a little bit more background, too? The schools moved.
I know.
Okay.
I totally am aware.
All right.
I haven't been missing that long. I got that. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
alternative schools.
Well, listen, I'll take laughter in
For
this moment.
those who didn't hear Brother Williams, he said it'd be an alternative school. Hey, that's terrible. I love all the.
Next, 8.21, so Project Lead the Way is a grant for BTW. So it is recommended that we approve this grant for Booker T. Washington High School, Middle School at $15,000 to be utilized for the school STEM program. Similar item, 8.22, is Project Lead the Way for Commons K through 8, and this is $25,000 for the STEM program as well. 8.23, our SPED classroom device refresh for Apple devices. I'll turn it over to Chief Page. Well, actually, this is just an item similar to the others that we had the federal relief funds, and we want to ensure that we utilize and we're good stewards of ensuring that they have technology. And so this is a refresh of $1,006,362. I'll save Mr. Page some time there. All right, and the next item is the Leadership Fast Track for Christian Brothers University, license program. And I'll turn it over to Chief Carson to just discuss the tracks of leadership as well.
Thank you, Superintendent Williams. The purchase will allow aspiring school leaders participating in the MSCS Leadership Fast Track program the opportunity to earn a K-12 educational leadership graduate certificate through Christian Brothers University in pursuit of their beginning instructional leadership license. It's designed for MSCS employees who already possess a master's degree, work in a K-12 setting, and are seeking certification to become a school principal or assistant principal.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carson, or Chief Carson. Are there any questions? If not, I will proceed to the next item. All right, the next item is for Elevation for ESL Data Management Platform. It is an existing contract for Curriculum and Associates, and we're just requesting to amend it to add on a component for professional learning in the amount of $316,350. The next item is for the purchase of SPED Classroom Device Refresh. It is also an add-on. It's similar to the previous item. I do believe it's just separate based on the bids that came in, and we align with Thomas Consultants on the procurement of Broadway. So this is an update for $1,328,846 for the purchase of laptops, computer cards, and deployment services. Good. All right. That is it. That concludes staff action items, ma'am.
So on 9.1, we're asking any board members who have any funds left, if you would be prepared to get those into the board office, and we will read the correct items into record next week. 9.2, Mr. Johnson asked for a conversation around custodial contracts.
Thank you, Board Chair. I just really wanted us to start a discussion. I know it's budget season, and I know that based on some of the things that I've seen at my own schools, I don't know if most of you know, there was a situation in Hamilton a few months ago where the students were just upset about the cleanliness of the schools. I really want us to start having this discussion about how we're actually going to deal with our current contractor, because it doesn't seem like that particular contractor is doing well with our schools. So I really do want us to start having this discussion because, you know, whether we have a superintendent or not, our schools have to be clean.
All right, so Board Member Johnson. And so we've had conversations. During this time, I've had conversations with those exact same students, Student Congress, our staff, our really, for the most part, our board teachers during our district teacher advisory committee. So this continues to come up as a topic around the cleanliness of our schools and the accountability that we must have. This is one of our largest contracts to date. The contract, the base is around $30 million. I think the pandemic portion is $6 million because I was not satisfied as a sitting superintendent around the services for pandemic cleaning. We paused that because we didn't feel that we were getting pandemic cleaning, and we're working that out with the vendor to show proof around that at this time. So I have held accountability and have had discussions with our chief of operations as well. In terms of doing something different, bringing that for the board to review, we're going to go to bid. You guys even had a lofty conversation last year around internal, external. Right now, we have the accountability there. I have pushed it on to Chief of Operations to say what is next steps, what does it look like. He's done a feasibility analysis where we wanted to come to the board where we had the recommendations considering the timing of operations and where we are at the end of the year, the transition, no matter who's the superintendent. I think that we all share the same sentiments that our students deserve cleanliness, our staff deserves cleanliness, and there should be accountability. And so I know that there is a plan that we're looking forward to bringing back. And so Mr. Weary is working on that at this time. And so we look forward to bringing back that information to you.
Okay, just another question. So are we looking at continuing with the current contract or?
No, sir. We are looking forward to bringing you guys some recommendations, and in those recommendations, we're going to go back to look to say, hey, because some board members have shared and expressed different sentiments. Some have expressed around bringing it back in-house. Some have expressed, continuing with outsourcing, but with new vendors. Some we've even had creative conversations around maybe this contract is too large to sit with one vendor. And so those conversations have occurred even through our one-on-ones and those discussions. So we hope to bring back a plan comprehensively of next steps and give the board the opportunity to weigh in on it. Yes, sir.
Board Member Woods, Board Member Harris, and then Board Member Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be respectful of our time. I do think it's important that we at least, don't want to be revisionist here, but I think it's important that Board Member Johnson at least have a historical context dating back to obviously us choosing to outsource the service in the first place, right? Obviously, it was financial decisions made then, right or wrong or indifferent. But regardless of who wore those shirts, what company brand, your colleagues have long argued that yes, you may have one neck to choke by having one vendor, but many of these employees are working regardless if it's the current vendor, previous vendor, or the next vendor. It's the same employees struggling to clean a number of schools. And so I am excited that our board chair as well as our superintendent is talking about bringing us on the journey with them, because what we've seen in the past is a finished product, and then this board is having to debate how we unring that bell in many cases, but us being able to come along on what that solution looks like, agnostic on who that vendor is, I think is what's going to be our long-term plan. We've looked at ways of increasing compensation, but I agree with Superintendent. I think one potential solution may be a diversified set of partners and making those adjustments along the way. It's not just throwing out a vendor that's not serving the district well, because whoever you bring in, if it's one vendor, I think they're going to still be having the same challenges, particularly from a workforce standpoint.
Thank you, Chair. So what happens in between time, in between the time that you all bring back a full plan? How do we ensure that our schools are clean every day?
So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Muse along with Mr. Stephen Weary, but there's accountability metrics within the contract, Board Member Harris, that we have even started with our finance team that we're looking if accountability is not there, we get to have, I want to say punitive damages, but that's not the word, whatever, those damages are. Our chief financial officer, who has been well trained at this point in time, is looking at invoices, ensuring that, hey, full payment is not made at this time. So that process has already begun. with the accountability. I think even when Chief Muse started, he's had consistent conversations with the management, and there have been some improvements along the way in some schools. And so that has been what, the management process has looked like. But is there anything that you guys want to add of value to the conversation?
And before you add, Chief, the reason I brought it up is because just last week I had a teacher say that I'm having to clean my own classroom in the mornings, and our educators shouldn't have to worry about that. And so I want to know, I understand you all are working on a comprehensive plan, which we appreciate, but what is happening tomorrow morning?
Thank you, Board Member Harris. So right now what we're doing, we're working with our facility teams, and our custodial team is collaborating, and we're going out to schools periodically ourselves, visiting schools, making sure they're clean. We're meeting with the vendor weekly. We're coming up with plans to make sure they deploy folks out to clean where we're having issues at. Hopefully this will help by us having boots on the ground. We're trying to support the plant managers in their role. So we're putting more onus on the vendor to hold them accountable and make sure they're consistent.
And then one other point that I will add is around the plant managers. So since then, we now have a one-to-one plant manager model that we have in our schools, which we didn't have before. So that allows for additional support to weigh in, to report to the operations team when they see something on the ground, that they have that accountability with the vendor as well.
Board Member Coleman, and then Board Member Williams.
Thank you, Chair. You finally got one right. I have been out for the last 3 weeks doing community conversations in every school in District 9. Every school, elementary, middle, and high school. And when I ask the question, or I ask some kind of way, the same subject comes up. And I've shared it with Board Chair Green. Some way, Board Member Garcia, the word comes up, our school is nasty. I hear that the two people that go out with me that's taking notes, when we leave, they say, Ms. Coleman, it took 10 minutes to get it out today. Ms. Coleman, it took 3 minutes for the children to tell us today. Our schools are nasty. The bathroom is nasty. The hallway is nasty. And we addressed this a few years ago and said that this was going to change. Our children should not have to go to school in nasty environments. It should not be so. We're in 2024 and our children, the teachers are having to empty garbage cans before they can start teaching. There's no toilet tissue in the bathrooms, no paper towels, no soap in the bathrooms for our babies. And yes, we need to address that. And I thank you for starting the conversation, but we need to really look into this. Thank you.
Board Member Williams.
Well, the schools have not always been nasty. Let me say that first. There was a time when they were very, very clean and the food was even good. But that was a time when the district owned the services. Now we have the services outsourced to people that I don't know how much they're paid, but I'm assuming it's a very healthy amount. But the schools are filthy. They didn't get filthy overnight. It has been a process since they have been there. No one in the building has oversight of the people who clean the schools. Because they'll say, we don't work for you, we work for whomever we are working for. But they are being paid a wage, I guess the company is, to maintain the contracts. And it would certainly be worth our effort to look into bringing this back in-house. In some way managing, because the custodial staff at one time took pride in the school. The people who cooked took pride in the food. And it was good food. And the schools were extremely clean. I stayed 45 years, so I know the schools were once clean and the food was once good. It is no longer true today. So whatever we can do to stem this process, we need to do it. If it's bringing it back in-house, that's what we need to do. Because we would have then control of it. Is there any kind of rubric or analysis to show the cleanliness of schools, of all 200 of them? Do we know which schools are clean and which schools are not clean and what the problems are?
Yes. Board
Are they
member-
rated in any way?
Yes, Board Member Williams. We do have KPIs, performance indicators, that identify which schools are clean and which schools need attention. And that's something that we're working with the vendors on, identifying the schools that really, really need attention. And we're trying to ask them to deploy additional staff out to those schools to help us get them up to par.
Do we know the percentage of schools that are not clean?
At this point, the last time I looked at it, Board Member Williams, I think it was roughly 30%.
30% of the
Yes.
schools.
So we
Yes.
can get detailed information. So why don't I take the opportunity? I heard the board loud and clear. We've been having these discussions definitely around a step forward on what this looks like, in-source, outsource. So now I look forward to bringing back to you guys at our next committee. Let's have the discussion. I heard you loud and clear. For me, there's no defense to this. I want the accountability there. I think I've had creative conversations with you guys around next steps, but I hear you loud and clear. You want it sooner, so let's go through and have that discussion at the next committee. All right, thank you.
And don't leave out food, because every conversation I've had with students, even the ones who don't speak my language, it has been very clear that there is an issue going on this school year. They deserve a clean school, but God knows they deserve to eat every day. Thank you.
Well received on the food, so I'm glad our team is already prepared, because every student that I've talked to has talked about food. So we can just go ahead and push forward the timeline, because we do have a plan. We also have some capital requests that's in our transformational plan. As you remember, our schools have not been outfitted in years to cook hot food in the buildings. So board member, I hear you loud and clear. Or
Thank
board
you.
chair rather, so we'll get that back to you.
Thank you, Board Member Garcia.
I want to wrap us up by thanking Board Member Johnson for adding something to the agenda. We need to do this more often and have just a public dialogue about things that we're hearing in our schools. Board Member Coleman is exactly what I hear from every student that I've spoken to. It's the food and my school is not clean. We can get that right. I mean, we have a difference of opinion on maybe textbooks or a approach to teaching. We don't get everything right, but we can have clean schools and good food. Like that I feel like we can accomplish that. And our job is to promote Memphis-Shelby County schools to our community, to enroll your students, to keep your students here. So let's get it right. And thank you for bringing this discussion forward.
Thank you, Board Member Garcia. Our wonderful parliamentarian, who many of you probably see him sitting here. He's our additional board member. But he wanted to share something tonight because he felt that he wanted to give us clarity. So let me introduce Mr. Schultz to the public. Thank you.
No, I'm not going to sing. There was a great deal of discussion, and I appreciate Kenneth Walker's statements on it. On the thing called equivalency under your superintendent, the superintendent search. You don't know what I did, but for 33 years I taught at the University of Memphis. I was head of the brass division in the music department. And we used language like that quite a bit. It would say a doctorate or equivalent. And the question is, what in the world does that mean, equivalent? I can tell you how we interpreted it. These are your rules, ladies and gentlemen. You interpret your rules. But I'm going to give you a slightly different take on it. When we had positions open, they would send information in. We would have to decide if there were, let's say you needed a doctorate. What is the equivalent of a doctorate in music? It could be experience. Person might not have a doctorate, but they played in the New York Philharmonic for 30 years. They're great. That's equivalent. And we decided what was equivalent, but it was on a case-by-case basis. Because it's written into your policy, if you tried to list other things, it still wouldn't help you when you get to the or equivalent. That has to be decided on the individual case. each one look at what the qualifications say, listen what they have in their package, listen what they have to say, and decide if there is an equivalency there. If not, then the job gets very easy. But that would require a discussion. You'd have to decide, is that an equivalent or is it not? But that's a different way of looking at it, and this is how we did it at the university when I was there. And it worked pretty well, and thank you very much, and happy birthday to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz, for giving us guidance. If there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.